My grandfather from York received a letter from Florida 50 years after his death, and we realized he's alive okay. I know how this sounds. I've been debating whether to post this for weeks, but after what happened last night, I feel like I need to share this with people who might have some insight. My name is David Morrison. I'm 32, and I live in Toronto. This story starts with my grandfather, William Morrison, who died in 1995 in York, England. He was 78 years old, had worked as a librarian at York Minster Library for most of his life, was quiet, kind, loved crossword puzzles, and Earl Grey tea. He died of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning, very peacefully, surrounded by family. Or at least, that's what we all believe for the last 25 years. Fast forward to last month. I was going through some of my late grandmother's things. She passed away last year and found a letter in a drawer she'd never mentioned. The envelope was yellowed with age, postmarked from Miami, Florida, dated March 15th, 2020. Here's the thing. My grandfather died in 1995. 25 years ago, the letter was addressed to William Morrison, York, England, with our old address. It was written in a shaky but familiar handwriting that I would recognize anywhere. It was my grandfather's handwriting. I know that sounds impossible, but I've seen his writing thousands of times. Birthday cards, Christmas letters, notes he'd leave for my grandmother. This was definitely his handwriting. The letter read asterisk, "My dearest Margaret, asterisk asterisk, I hope this letter finds you well. I know it's been a very long time, and I can only imagine what you must be thinking. The truth is, I don't know how to explain what happened to me, but I need you to know that I'm alive. Not dead. Very much alive. Asterisk asterisk, I'm in Miami now, working at the University of Miami Library. I know this sounds mad, but I can't return to York. Not yet. There are things here I need to understand. Things about myself that I'm only beginning to discover. Asterisk asterisk, please don't worry about me. I'm safe. I'm healthy, and I think about you and the children every single day. I know you probably think I abandoned you all, but I swear I didn't choose this. Something chose me. Asterisk asterisk, if you're reading this and you're still alive, please write back. I need to know you're okay. I need to know our family is still whole. Asterisk asterisk, all my love. Asterisk asterisk, William. Asterisk, I stood there holding that letter for probably 10 minutes, my hands shaking. This was impossible. My grandfather had been dead for 25 years. I'd seen his body at the funeral. I'd helped carry the coffin. My parents, my aunts, my cousins, we'd all mourned him together, but the handwriting, there was no denying it. And the letter was postmarked just a few months ago. I called my mother immediately. She thought I was having some kind of breakdown. David, what are you talking about? Grandpa William has been dead for decades. I know, but look at this letter. Look at the handwriting. She came over to my apartment, and we sat at my kitchen table, staring at that piece of paper like it might explode. Maybe it's a prank, she suggested. Someone with good handwriting copying his style. But who would do that? And why now, 25 years later? We decided to investigate. First, we checked with the post office to see if there was any record of the letter being delivered. The postal worker confirmed it had been delivered to our old family address in February 2020, right around the time my grandmother was in the hospital and couldn't collect her mail properly. Next, we did something that felt both ridiculous and necessary. We called the University of Miami Library. University of Miami Library, how can I help you? Hi, I'm looking for someone named William Morrison. He would have worked there recently. Asterisk, there was a pause. William Morrison? That's interesting. We did have someone by that name working here, but he left quite suddenly about 6 months ago. He was in our rare books department. My heart was pounding. Do you have any contact information for him? I'm sorry, but he didn't leave any forwarding information. He just disappeared, honestly. Very strange circumstances. What do you mean, strange circumstances? Well, he was an older gentleman, probably in his 70s, claiming to be a retired librarian from England. He had all the right qualifications, spoke with a lovely British accent, and was absolutely brilliant with rare manuscripts. But he seemed confused about dates sometimes. He'd talk about events from decades ago, as if they were recent. The librarian's voice dropped to almost a whisper. And then there were the dreams. He said he kept having these vivid dreams about his family in England, about his funeral. He was convinced he'd died and somehow come back to life. I had to sit down. Did he look like? Was he tall? Thin? Gray hair? Glasses? Yes, actually. You know him? I I think so. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my grandfather. About the man I'd known and loved for 20 years before he died. Kind, gentle, always reading, always helping people find information. He'd been the one to teach me how to use a library, how to research family history, how to appreciate old books, and the stories they contained. But there was something else I remembered now. In the months before his death, he'd been acting strangely. He'd have these moments of confusion, like he was lost in time. He'd ask us about events that had happened years ago, as if they were current news. He'd get upset about things that hadn't happened yet. The time, we'd assumed it was just old age, maybe the beginning of dementia. But what if it was something else entirely? I started researching. I looked up every article about disappearances, strange cases, unexplained phenomena. I found nothing that matched exactly, but I did find some interesting things about people who claimed to have died and come back. People who existed in temporal anomalies. Ridiculous, I know. But what else could explain a letter from a dead man? Then I found something else that made my blood run cold. A newspaper article from the York Herald, dated March 1995, just 2 weeks after my grandfather's funeral. Asterisk, local man seen alive after reported death. Asterisk, the article was brief, buried on page 12. It mentioned that several witnesses had reported seeing William Morrison alive and well in York 2 weeks after his reported death. The police had investigated but found nothing conclusive. The witnesses were dismissed as mistaken or grieving. My grandmother had never mentioned this article. None of us had known about it. That's when I realized this wasn't just a strange letter. This was the tip of something much bigger. Something that had been happening for 25 years, and we'd had no idea. Asterisk. The next morning, I made some calls that I never thought I'd make in my life. First to a private investigator in Miami, someone who could help me track down information about this mysterious William Morrison. Then to a professor at the University of Toronto who specialized in temporal anomalies and consciousness studies. Dr. Sarah Chun was surprisingly receptive when I explained the situation. Mr. Morrison, while your story sounds extraordinary, I've studied enough cases of temporal displacement to know that the impossible sometimes happens. The human consciousness is still largely a mystery to us. She agreed to meet with me, and I brought the letter along with copies of my grandfather's known handwriting samples. She spent nearly an hour comparing them under magnification. The handwriting analysis is fascinating, she said finally. There are definite similarities, but also some subtle differences that might indicate stress or altered mental state. But more importantly, the psychological implications of what you're describing. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If someone genuinely believed they had died and come back to life, and they were functioning in society with that belief, we might be looking at a case of dissociative identity or temporal displacement disorder. But he's been seen by witnesses, I insisted. In York, 25 years ago, people who knew him saw him alive after his funeral. Dr. Chin made some notes. Let's look at this systematically. Do you have any other evidence that might support this claim? That's when I remembered something my aunt had mentioned years ago. My grandfather had kept a detailed journal throughout his life, something he'd been doing since he was a teenager. When he died, the journal was supposedly buried with him, as was his wish. But what if it wasn't? I called my cousin James, who had been at the funeral and had helped carry the coffin. James, I need to ask you something. Do you remember exactly what was buried with Grandpa? There was a long pause. David, why are you asking about this now? Just humor me. What was in the coffin besides him? Well, there was his favorite book, that old poetry collection he always read, his glasses, his watch, and there was supposed to be his journal. But what? I couldn't find it that morning. I remember looking everywhere for it. Mom was getting upset because the funeral was starting soon. So we just put the other things in and went ahead with everything. My heart was racing. James, do you still have the key to Grandpa's old house? My grandfather's house in York had been sold years ago, but my Aunt Margaret had kept the key just in case. James still had it. That afternoon, we drove to York, me, James, and Dr. Chun. The house looked exactly as I remembered it from childhood visits, except now it was painted a different color and had new windows. The key still worked, and we spent the next few hours searching every room, every drawer, every closet. We found old photo albums, forgotten Christmas decorations, even some of Grandpa's old library books. But no journal, Then James remembered something. Grandpa always said he had a special hiding place for important things. Said it was from when he was a boy. We searched the house systematically, looking for anything that might be a hiding place. Finally, in the basement, behind a loose brick in the wall, we found it. A small metal box, rusted with age but still intact. Inside was my grandfather's journal, along with several other items that made my blood run cold. Asterisk the journal entries. From 1995 were strange. They described events that hadn't happened yet. My wedding, which was still 15 years in the future, the birth of my daughter, who didn't exist yet. Even the exact date my grandmother would die, which turned out to be correct. But more disturbing were the entries from the last week of his life. Asterisk. March 5th, 1995. I woke up today feeling different. Like I'm not really here. Margaret says I seem confused, but I feel more real than I've ever felt. I can see the future in my mind, my funeral, the grief, the empty house. But I'm still here. March 8th, 1995. They buried me today. I watched from the back of the church as they lowered an empty coffin into the ground. I don't understand how this happened, but I'm free now. Free to explore what I've become. March 12th, 1995. I booked a flight to America. There's something there I need to find. Something that will help me understand why I'm still walking among the living. Asterisk the final entry was dated March 14th, 1995 asterisk. Tomorrow I leave for Miami. I don't know if I'll ever see Margaret and the children again, but I need to know the truth about what I am now. If you're reading this, and you're still alive, know that I love you all more than words can say. I'm not dead, I'm just different. Asterisk James was pale as he read the entries. David, this is insane. This is like something out of a horror movie. But Dr. Chun was taking notes frantically. This is remarkable. If these entries are genuine, and if they were written before the events they describe, we might be looking at a case of precognitive awareness combined with some form of consciousness displacement. I was thinking about something else entirely. If he left for Miami on March 15th, 1995, and the letter was postmarked March 15th, 2020, that's exactly 25 years later. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence that we spent the rest of the day in York, visiting the cemetery where my grandfather was supposedly buried. The headstone was there, with his name and dates, March 15th, 1917, to March 10th, 1995. But when we asked the cemetery caretaker if he remembered the funeral, he looked confused. William Morrison? Yes, I remember him. Nice man. But I always thought it was strange. He seemed so alive at his own funeral, laughing, talking to people, even helping carry his own coffin. What do you mean? I asked. Well, it was very unusual. Most funerals, the person is, dead. But Mr. Morrison seemed very much present, very much alive. We all thought it was some kind of open casket arrangement, but when we opened the coffin, he trailed off, looking uncomfortable. When you opened the coffin, it was empty, completely empty, just his clothes and personal items. No body at all. James grabbed my arm. David, what the hell is going on? I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. Whatever had happened to my grandfather, it was far stranger and more complex than any of us had imagined. That evening, I called the private investigator in Miami and told him everything. He agreed to help me track down any information about William Morrison's time in Florida. I've got some interesting information for you, he said when we spoke the next day. William Morrison did work at the University of Miami Library for about 6 months in 2019 to 2020. But here's the strange part. He checked into a hotel using a passport that was issued in 1990 and expired in 1995. How is that possible? That's what I'd like to know. And there's more. He was seen by multiple witnesses, but when we checked with immigration records, there's no record of him ever entering the United States. The pieces were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was more terrifying than I could have imagined. My grandfather wasn't just alive. He was something that existed outside the normal boundaries of life and death, time and space. And somehow, he'd been trying to reach us for 25 years. But why now? Why had he sent that letter after all this time? / that question would be answered soon enough. The private investigator's name was Marcus Webb, and he'd been tracking unusual cases for over 20 years. When I told him about the empty coffin and the expired passport, he didn't laugh or dismiss it out of hand. Instead, he seemed intrigued. I've seen stranger things than this, Mr. Morrison. Let me do some digging in Miami. See what I can find about your grandfather's time there. 3 days later, he called with information that would change everything we thought we knew about my grandfather's story. David, you need to get to Miami. Now, I've found some disturbing information about your grandfather's activities there. I booked the first flight I could find. Dr. Chun insisted on coming with me. She said cases like this were exactly what she'd been researching for years. James wanted to come too, but he had work commitments. Miami was everything I'd expected and nothing at all. Bright, loud, overwhelming. And yet there was something underneath it all that felt familiar, like I'd been there before in a dream. Marcus met us at the airport. He was a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that somehow made the impossible seem more plausible. Your grandfather was staying at the Casa Marina Hotel in Coral Gables, he told us as we drove through the city. He had a suite there for 6 months, paid in cash, never used a credit card. The staff remembered him because he was unusual. In what way? I asked. He'd have these episodes, Marcus explained. Times when he'd seem confused about the date, about current events. He'd talk about things that happened decades ago, as if they were happening now. But he was also incredibly knowledgeable, could quote entire books from memory, knew historical facts that weren't even widely known at the time. We visited the hotel first. The Casa Marina was an old, elegant building with Spanish colonial architecture and a sense of faded grandeur. The manager, a woman named Elena Rodriguez, still remembered William Morrison. Oh yes, Mr. Morrison. He was a very interesting guest. Stayed with us for months, but he never seemed to leave the building much. Said he was researching something. What kind of research? Dr. Chen asked. Elena looked uncomfortable. He said he was studying the nature of existence. Very philosophical, you know? But there were other things. He'd ask strange questions. About time, about what happens after death. And he had these dreams, vivid dreams that he said felt more real than waking life. She led us to his old suite, room 314. It was still vacant, and the hotel had kept it exactly as he'd left it, partly out of curiosity and partly because they weren't sure what to do with his belongings. The room was like stepping into a time capsule. Books were scattered everywhere: philosophy, physics, metaphysics, ancient history. There were notebooks filled with equations and diagrams that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. And on the desk, there was a letter addressed to me. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Asterisk, my dear David, asterisk, asterisk, if you're reading this, then you've found the truth about what happened to me. I'm sorry it's taken so long to explain, but the truth is more complicated than either of us could have imagined. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm not dead, but I'm not exactly alive either. I exist in a state between what scientists might call a temporal anomaly or a consciousness displacement. I've been trying to understand what I am for the last 25 years, and I think I'm finally beginning to figure it out. Asterisk, 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 there's a research facility in the Florida Keys, an old military installation that was converted to scientific research after the Cold War. They've been studying phenomena like me, people who exist outside normal temporal boundaries. I've been working with them, helping them understand what happens when consciousness doesn't follow the normal rules of time and space. Asterisk, asterisk, I can't return to York yet, David. Not until I understand what I am and what I'm meant to do. But I need you to know that I love you all, and I think about you every day. Asterisk, asterisk, there's something else you need to know. You have the same potential I have. The ability to exist outside normal temporal boundaries. It runs in our family. It's why I was able to survive my death, and why you're able to find me now. Asterisk, asterisk, I've left instructions with the hotel staff for how to contact the research facility. They'll explain everything. But be careful, David. There are others like us, and not all of them are friendly. Asterisk, asterisk, all my love. Asterisk, asterisk, Dad. Asterisk, wait, Dad? My grandfather had never called anyone Dad. He'd always been Grandpa William to everyone. This letter wasn't written to you, Dr. Chen said, examining it carefully. Look at the handwriting. It's different from the other letter. More recent. And the signature, she was right. The handwriting was similar but not identical. And the signature read, William, not William Morrison. Marcus was on his phone, calling someone. I need you to check something for me. Is there any record of a William Morrison checking into this hotel under a different name. He listened for a few minutes, then hung up. That's impossible. According to the hotel records, no one named William Morrison ever stayed here. The suite was vacant the entire time we've been tracking it. James called while we were still at the hotel. David, you need to get back to York. Now. Something's happened. What do you mean? Grant's house. Someone's been there. The door was unlocked, and some of Grandpa's things are missing. But that's not the weird part. What else? There's another letter, addressed to all of us. And David, it's postmarked from 2045. My blood ran cold. What? I'll text you the photo. You need to see this. The photo James sent made me drop my phone. The envelope was indeed postmarked from 2045, 25 years in the future. And it was addressed to the Morrison family, York, England. But the handwriting, that was definitely mine. I was on the next flight back to York. The letter from 2045 sat in my lap like a bomb waiting to explode. My handwriting, but I'd never written anything like it. The envelope was pristine, as if it had been created moments before James took. The photo, when I got to Grant's house, the whole family was there. Mom, Dad, my aunts, even cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone was talking at once, showing me photos of the letter, discussing what it could mean. The letter itself was short but devastating asterisk. To my family in 2020, asterisk asterisk, I know this seems impossible, but I'm writing to you from 2045. I've learned to navigate time the way others navigate space. What Grandpa William started, I've finished. Asterisk asterisk, don't be afraid. What happened to him, to us, isn't death. It's evolution. The ability to exist outside the normal boundaries of time and space. Asterisk asterisk William is real. He's been real for 25 years, working with scientists who understand what we are. And soon, you'll understand too. Asterisk asterisk, I'm coming to get you. Be ready. Asterisk asterisk love. Always. Asterisk asterisk David. Asterisk my own signature. My own words. But I'd never written this letter, Doctor. Chen examined it carefully. The paper is from 2045. I can tell by the manufacturing process. But the ink. She looked up at me with wide eyes. The ink is from 2020. This letter exists in 2 time periods simultaneously. James was pale. David, what the hell is happening to our family? That's when the doorbell rang that I opened it to find a woman I'd never seen before, mid-40s, wearing a dark suit, carrying a briefcase. She smiled when she saw me. David Morrison? I'm Dr. Elizabeth Shaw from the Temporal Research Institute. In the Florida Keys. Your grandfather has been trying to reach you. Temporal Research Institute? I've never heard of it. You wouldn't have. It's a highly classified facility. Your grandfather has been working with us for the past 25 years, helping us understand temporal displacement phenomena. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The whole family stared at her as she set up what looked like a small computer on our kitchen table. Your grandfather isn't dead, she said simply. He's what we call a temporal anchor, someone whose consciousness exists outside normal time streams. He's been helping us understand how human consciousness can transcend death and linear time. Mom stepped forward. This is insane. My husband has been dead for 25 years. Dr. Shaw turned to her with a gentle smile. Has he? Or has he simply been existing in a different temporal state? The human consciousness is far more complex than we understand. In cases like your husband's, death isn't an ending. It's a transformation. She opened her briefcase and pulled out several photographs. These were taken last week. Your husband, William Morrison, working in our research facility. The photos showed my grandfather, unmistakably him, but somehow younger, more vibrant. He looked happy, engaged, completely alive. But that's impossible, James said. He's been dead for 25 years. Has he? Dr. Shaw pulled out a tablet and showed us a video. This was recorded yesterday. The video showed my grandfather, alive, well, talking to scientists about temporal mechanics. But there was something else in the background of the video. A younger version of myself. But I'd never been to Florida. What you're seeing, Dr. Shaw explained, is a temporal echo. Your grandfather exists in multiple time streams simultaneously. And now, thanks to his research, we've discovered that the ability is hereditary. Asterisk, she looked directly at me. You have the same potential he has, David. The ability to exist outside normal temporal boundaries. The letter from 2045? You wrote it. You will write it. Time isn't linear for people like us. It's fluid, flexible. The room was silent except for the sound of my heartbeat. This was impossible. And yet, it explained everything. The letters, the journal entries, the empty coffin, even my own handwriting from the future. Why now? I asked. Why is this happening? Because we're approaching a temporal convergence point, Dr. Shaw said. A moment when the barriers between time streams become thin. Your grandfather has been preparing for this moment for 25 years. She opened her briefcase again and pulled out what looked like a small device. This will allow you to join him, to understand what you really are. Mom stepped forward. David, don't. This is crazy. This woman shows up out of nowhere with impossible stories about time travel and letters from the future. But Dad put his hand on her shoulder. Patricia, think about it. William's journal, the empty coffin, the witnesses who saw him alive after his death. What if it's true? Dr. Shaw nodded. I can prove it. But the proof requires a leap of faith. She activated the device. The air in the room began to shimmer, and suddenly I could see him, my grandfather, standing in the doorway, exactly as he'd been 25 years ago, but somehow more real than ever. Hello, David, he said, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. I'm sorry it took so long to explain. But now you understand. Now you know what we are. The device began to glow brighter, and I felt something inside me shift, like a door opening that had been closed for my entire life. I have a choice, I realized. Don't I? My grandfather smiled. We all do, David. We always have. The question is whether you're ready to make it. I looked around the room at my family, confused, scared, but still loving me. At Dr. Chun, who was taking notes with the fascination of a scientist witnessing the impossible. At the letter from 2045 that I'd somehow already written, the choice was obvious. I'm ready, I said as the light enveloped me. I heard my grandfather's voice one last time. Welcome to the space between moments, David. Welcome to forever. The last thing I remember is my mother's voice, calling my name, and the strange realization that I was hearing it from both the past and the future simultaneously. Some mysteries, I realized, aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be lived.